This series was produced by Don Ashford and originally aired on KTRT FM 97.5 in the Methow Valley. My thanks to Don Ashford and Diana Hottells for the privilege of making these stories available on Voices of the Methow. Enjoy!
The next segment is a part of our series, The Whole Damn Valley, which is named after Diana Hottells' book. And her book is full of stories of folks from a bygone era. The Methow Valley has always attracted characters, produced characters, generated characters, developed character. These are stories collected by Diana back in the 70s and the 80s from all kinds of folks, some who were here, pioneers, and idealistic newcomers. They're all here, all in this place, kind of like we are, together, looking for the promised land here in the whole damn valley. Here's Diana.
I wrote this obituary for Cynthia Bailey in September of 1985. Cynthia Lemaster Bailey, 96, was one of those extraordinary human beings whose delight in everything and everyone was as infectious as her laughter. "I just love people," she declared to me one day, and that love ricocheted right back to her. Someone once said, "If you don't hear Cynthia laughing somewhere in the valley, she isn't here." Thing is, she stayed right here for 75 years. She detested this valley that scorching day in 1910 when she arrived by stagecoach. She prayed all night she'd survive until morning so she could get out of this snake-infested pit. After a few days, she got used to it, then got to love it so much she never left until she died last Tuesday. As Reverend Cohn said at her funeral, "We are here to celebrate Cynthia's life." And the overflow crowd at Prett's Chapel cried and laughed because they'd known her. Her immense family was there, too, spilling over into the main hall, forcing friends to sit in the anteroom and the rarely used casket room. "I really populated the area," she once laughed. At the time of her death, she had 35 great-great-grandchildren and one great-great-great-granddaughter. Poems written by her family and friends were read at the service, many of the verses alluding to her talents as a cook, her inability to let anyone go hungry or let anyone gain less than 5 pounds at a sitting. Throughout the Depression and into the late 50s, Cynthia owned and operated a string of 6 restaurants in the valley. Reverend Cohn benefited from Cynthia's policy of never allowing a minister to pay for his meals. She tried to retire a couple of times, but her clientele had gotten hooked on her cooking, and she never could say no. A woman sitting next to me at Prett's commented in a loud whisper to her husband, "Cynthia was one beautiful person. She was one beautiful lady." Pause. And she was pretty, too. Indeed she was, and her eyes never in 96 years lost their sparkle. I think a good many of her friends were sitting there Friday looking forward to meeting up with her again in the other world, where, as one of the poems rhapsodized, Cynthia'd be cooking meals for St. Peter, much to his delight.
Methow Valley's never been an easy place to live. It's attracted characters and it's produced characters. Here's one of them. Diana?
This is a story about Flora Belle Hicks, who was the switchboard operator up in Winthrop. And I wrote this for the Methow Valley News in April of 1980. Flora Belle Milliman Hicks, 77, lives housebound 2 blocks from Winthrop's main street, abiding solitude gracefully. Once, however, Flora Belle was in the hub of things. As a telephone operator during the 1920s at Winthrop's West Side Telephone Company, she roused the doctor in emergencies, rallied townspeople during fires, recruited forest firefighters, and even broadcast the war news. I still dream about it, she admits. Despite wages of 15 cents an hour, 45 cents after 13 years, Flora Belle led an interesting and sometimes exciting life at the telephone exchange. She did indeed live within earshot of the switchboard, at first with her parents and later with her husband. The switchboard closed at 8:30 p.m., but she wasn't free to go very far away. Flora Belle was the scanner in those early telephone days. Often during the night, the emergency buzzer would shatter her sleep, and she would rise, light the kerosene lamp, and deal with the problem. Babies come at night generally, you know, she says. Many a time she had to reassure the caller, ring the doctor from his sleep, and explain a baby wanted to be born. When fire broke out, she was the first informed. Immediately, she would ring the emergency alarm to everyone with a phone and tell them where the fire was burning. The rush was on. Dousing a fire was a community project. If people didn't have their own bucket, they'd dash to the mercantile, grab a bucket from the shelves, and be off to the fire. A bucket brigade would form, everyone lining up from river or irrigation ditch to the house, passing the full and empty buckets up and down the line. When forest fires raged in the mountains, again the operator was one of the first contacted. I knew everyone from Mazama to Carlton then, she says. When the call came, she'd figure out who could go into the hills for days, sometimes weeks, with a pack string to fight the blaze. But emergency dispatching wasn't Flora's only extraordinary function. She also broadcast the news. During World War I, no radios blared into Valley ears, so when Flora received news about troop movement, victories, and defeats in Europe, she'd phone various people about the war. Beside the switchboard was a list of personal code rings, 2 shorts and a long or whatever. Everyone heard everyone else's ring, so everybody could rubberneck, she laughs. And believe me, they did.
The whole damn valley. Here's Diana.
This is the story about Zinzani, who ran the slaughterhouse up in Twisp. And I wrote it for the Methow Valley News in October of 1980. I entitled it The Blur at the Slaughterhouse. The man is fast. He walks fast, works fast, talks fast, and he's good. An expert is a joy to behold when he's in gear. Just because Zinzani happens to be in the business of killing, skinning, and cutting animals doesn't make his actions with the knife any less beautiful than, say, a welder's expertise with a torch or a carpenter's handling of a saw. When Gene goes to work, often at 4 a.m., there's no slack time. Unless you're on your toes, it's hard to keep the man in focus. He works a blue streak, whether he's scraping hair off a scalded pig, gutting a steer, skinning a lamb, slicing roasts from a hanging quarter, or setting a smoky fire of applewood under bacon and hams. He expects his assistants to do the same. His son Gino, not long out of Liberty Bell High School, is learning the business from the killing chute to the bandsaw. Marty Huff, an 8-year veteran of the original slaughterhouse, was dragged out of retirement to do the wrapping. Harriet, Gene's wife of 7 months, who in real life is the head administrator at the county's district court, works beside him on the weekends. This flurry doesn't mean that the good times don't roll, too, at Methow Valley's only slaughterhouse. And not that the cows two-step down the chute. We have a lot of fun, Gene often says. He likes razzing his favorite customers. He's loud with his jokes. And if you want to get into verbal combat, just engage him in some thoughts about the state game department. One day last week, Gene said he was thinking about that sector of the government. His eyes flashed as he wielded his knife even faster on the beef rump. He slammed his sharp cutting instrument down on the marble counter, strode full tilt down the corridor to the hanging cooler, yanked a denuded beast off the hook, and displayed the pathetic specimen, a 35-pound deer. This is thanks to the game department for giving a great white hunter from the coast a license to come over here and kill our little fawns. Spitting mad that such killing goes on, he threw it back up onto its hook and slammed the heavy door on the sight. "Take the ears off that deer," Marty added. "It would look like a squirrel." Gene doesn't condemn hunting. In fact, he likes to see big bucks come through the slaughterhouse door, ones that have been carefully handled by those who know how to keep the meat from souring. Gene knows meat. He can appraise an animal on the spot and is quick to compliment the owner of a healthy animal. Gene took over the Twisp establishment from Emery Halterman in 1975 on a handshake, closed up his slaughterhouse in California, and brought his family to the valley. "Been here struggling ever since," he grins. "Actually, it's wonderful here. I wouldn't go back to that country for anything." I visited Gene the day he butchered a load of hogs. The concrete, high-ceiling slaughter room looked like a ring of hell, with hooks and saws and knives and a cauldron steaming. The ungodly noise of the scraper that dehairs the scalded pigs, mixed with sticky blood underfoot, set a scene not meant for the squeamish or the vegetarian. I was there for less than an hour. In that time, Gene and Gino had killed, with one swift 22 bullet to each brain, stuck, scalded, scraped, cut, and hung 9 huge porkers. Hoses constantly water-swept the floors and animals. Then they were done, hanging there in the eerie light, and they were done perfectly. At one point, when Gene's arms were deep inside a sow's body, undoing guts from the meat, blood flowing freely, he said, "People ask me all the time how I can do this. Well, it's the only thing I know." At another point in the operation, he shouted over the loud thumping and banging of the mechanical scraper, "You have to like it, otherwise you can just forget it." He said something more, but his words got shattered in the noise. That Gene likes what he does can be seen in his easy laugh, his animated movements, his banter with customers. Somebody has to do it. It might as well be Gene Zinzani and his crew. He does them all, he says. Lambs, goats, beef, hogs, deer, black widows, and bears.
So, there you have it. The book that these stories are taken from, The Whole Damn Valley, by Diana Hottells, can be had at the Trails End Bookstore, Ulrich's Pharmacy, the Confluence Gallery, and the Schaefer Museum.